Welcome back to Amateurs Podcast. We just bore witness to the greatest draft of all time. Now, I'm just kidding. But we saw some good picks, we saw some bad picks, and we're going to go through every single team's draft haul and say whether their haul made sense or if it didn't make sense.
Well, we're not going to cover the Nuggets.
We're not going to cover the Nuggets because they didn't have a haul. That's why I said every team that has a haul.
Zero haul.
So we're going to go alphabetical order, starting with the Atlanta Hawks, who only made one pick. They got Asa Noel at number 23. And they also got a very valuable unprotected first, which is the more valuable of Milwaukee or New Orleans
Next year,
2026, which is supposed to be a very stacked class. I said, of course, this pick made sense.
Yeah.
Getting a top consensus 13 talent at 23, and then getting that unprotected first round pick
for a 10-move jump.
Yeah.
It getting that pick was immense. Newell's fine. You know, he can contribute. They don't need him necessarily at that position. But, yeah, it made a ton of sense. If I was grading this, it'd be definitely have an A in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was doing grades, I put it at around a B, but I think he's a decent fit with Trae Young as much as a lob threat. I mean, we described him in our big board as a dunker.
Yeah.
And he provides a lob threat, especially with Clint Capella future being a little murky here.
Well, it's not Newell. You got to understand. It's the pick.
The pick is the key.
Is the key.
Yeah, because that could be a top 5 pick next year. It depends on we obviously Milwaukee's health and New Orleans' health are both big questions next year. Next team alphabetically, we of course have the Boston Celtics. They got Hugo Gonzalez 28, Amari Williams at 46, and Max Shulga at 57. For me, I mean, if y'all watched our big board, I only had one first round talent in their haul, Amari Williams, who was a mid-second rounder. And I don't really know we don't know the direction the Celtics are going in. We don't know if they're moving off Anthony Simons, who they just acquired for Drew Holiday. We don't know their plans with Jaylen Brown. Obviously, Jason Tatum is going to miss the whole year. And they just moved off Kristaps. Are they doing full rebuild? Trying to lose? They shed a lot of salary cap, getting rid of Drew. We don't know the plans, but I said that these picks didn't make sense.
I'm kind of in the middle here. Williams actually has an elite skill. He's a shot blocker, good defender. So he makes sense filling that gap with Horford maybe coming back, maybe not coming back. But Hugo Gonzalez, if this is a gap year, great. Run him out there, give him more than his 10 minutes a game from Real Madrid and see what he's got. If not, it made no sense. So I'm kind of in between. And Shulga, I don't know where he's going to get time in this.
Yeah, I mean, none of these guys are really going to be contributors next year, and I don't know if they're trying. I would assume they're not trying to really compete. But just questionable picks. Now we have Brooklyn Nets. No, these picks did not make sense. Probably the worst draft. They had 5 first-round picks. They took all of them instead of trying to move up. You know, they took all the late first-round picks, and one of the weaker drafts in recent memory. They had Igor Demine at 8, Nolan Traore 19, Drake Powell 22, Ben Saraff 26, and Danny Wolf at 27. They took back-to-back Jewish players, probably the first time in NBA history, most definitely. And more confusing is the fact that they took 3 guards.
Well, they're
who all struggle to score.
They can't shoot. None of them
all good passers.
The highest shooting percentage among those 3 guys is 30%, and that was Traore. It's the old Minnesota Timberwolves strategy. Let's draft Johnny Flynn and Ricky Rubio.
One of them's got to work. And I will say Traore is my favorite of the players, of those guards. I like Danny Wolf as well. But, I mean, Danny Wolf's
not on this team.
Not on this team. Danny Wolf's another guy who's a passer, premier passer for his size. So who's going to take the shots? Cam Thomas is literally going to take 45 shots next year because nobody was willing to shoot. Everyone's just going to pass. They're going to 24 shot clock violation.
This made zero sense to me. Every expert, including a non-expert, Stephen A. Smith, said they're not going to make all first round selections. And they made all 5 selections.
I mean, if they could have, especially considering only one of them was a lottery pick. Like, you tell me they couldn't flip 3 of those into a really good pick
Right.
next year or this year. I just was very confusing.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is they have one true shooter on that roster right now. It's Cam Johnson, right?
Yeah, he's a good player.
He's no longer going to be there because his timeline and the Nets timeline.
I don't even know if they have a timeline. Timeline
Implies they have a
implies that
plan.
there's a future.
Yeah, a plan. Wouldn't you draft one guard who could shoot? Just one. Liam McNeely? I mean,
Who?
okay,
I know what you're
but
saying.
you know
Yes,
what I'm
yes,
saying?
yeah.
oh, this was a brutal.
Yeah.
I'd give this close to an F, except you've got 5, rolls of the dice here. So who
Yeah, I
knows?
mean, you would think at least one of them would pan out.
Wow.
But next up we have the Charlotte Hornets, one of my favorite drafts this year. They got Colin Knippel at 4, Liam McNeely at 29, Zion James at 33, and Kalkbrenner at 34. I thought this was a really well done draft. Obviously, Kalkbrenner being the replacement for Mark Williams, who they traded to Phoenix. I thought a lot of the narrative around Charlotte is a lack of a culture. They remind a lot of people of the 2007 Florida Gators with all the arrests that happened in their locker room. So they brought in 3 big culture guys, Colin Knippel and Zion James, specifically guys who come from Duke. They love to draft from North Carolina, but come from Duke, a winning program, high character individuals that hopefully can inject a little bit of stability in this locker room.
I like it. It made sense, but I was a little puzzled. And I was puzzled by Knippel and McNeely because they very much have similar skill sets, similar bodies. McNeely, we've discussed whether he's a shooter or not a shooter, but if he's not a shooter, he's not in this league.
Yeah. That's where I disagree with you, though, is because I think Knippel is just a way better playmaker, and I think he's a solid defender at the end of the day.
Okay. I mean, I look at that roster though. If they hadn't gotten Kalkbrenner, I'm not. I mean, Nurkic is your center.
Yeah, no, I like Kalkbrenner. That pick a lot.
That makes a lot of sense.
He's way better defensively than Mark Williams. And I think that Knippel, floor spacing with LaMelo, shooting, McNeely, you're banking on that. And then I'm a fan of Zion James. I gave him a first round grade in our big board. I think I can see him having a Lou Dort type of role, and then Kalkbrenner, as we mentioned. So I'm a fan. I said this definitely makes sense.
Yeah, it made sense. I just was puzzled by the 2 first round pick selections. And I think they saved the draft by getting Kalkbrenner because they absolutely were crying out for a center.
Yeah, that was a really good pick there.
Yeah.
Next we have
And as part of the Williams trade, they got Phoenix Suns 29 first round pick.
Well, we have no idea how that's going to be.
I think that's good business.
Yeah.
Because they ended up getting 2 first round picks.
And it was clear they were
For
trying to
Williams.
move off of Mark Williams.
Yeah.
It's very clear that he was not in their plan for the future. Next up, we have Chicago Bulls. Another one of my least favorite drafts. They picked Noah Senge at 12 and Lachlan Olbrich at 55. We both had never heard of Lachlan Olbrich. And then with the Senge, it's like, let's pick a worse version of Matas Buzelis a year after we picked Matas Buzelis.
Yeah, I saw ESPN's grade on this, which was, to me, insane. Sengi's not ready to play, except defensively. He's a very good defender.
Yeah.
But he's not ready to pair with Buzelis. And by the way, where are they going? The Bulls.
Well, we've talked considering we've been doing this pod for a year, we've talked for at least a year about how the Bulls have no plan. They're the epitome of mediocrity and purgatory. And I would have just swung. I mean, Asenge, I guess, is swinging for the fences with the prospect. We don't know how high his offensive upside is, but just get someone who can turn into something. And just so many mid players on this team.
Yeah, they're about to lose, or theoretically lose, Vucevic.
And their replacement is Lachlan Olbrich?
No. Why not take Queen here?
Yeah, Quinn would have been good.
Somebody.
All right, next up we have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not really much to talk about here. They got Tyrese Proctor at 49 and Saliu Niang from Senegal at 58. I think they called him the Senegalese
George Niang.
George. What they could call him on the
The Senegalese.
Ron Holland.
Ron
The Senegalese Ron Holland, which is like the most disrespectful player comp I've ever heard.
I've often been called the Hialeah Ron Holland. Like,
And there we go.
I mean, come on.
You just doxed us all for our 12 viewers watching. But I mean, not much to talk about here. Proctor, I guess, is a good pick at the value here, considering 40% from three. Niang isn't going to play for them. Proctor probably won't either, considering they're the reigning 1 seed in the East. But sure.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's gradable. And if you're picking mid-second round,
It's
guys,
hard. We're not
it's
going to
like-
criticize, really.
No.
Except if you're the Grizzlies. Dallas Mavericks. Yeah, it made sense. Moving on, we have the Detroit.
Whoa. We can't. We're not going to talk about Cooper Flag. ESPN gave them a B. A B.
I have the article in front of me. Their justification was, from a process standpoint, the Mavericks don't get credit for winning the lottery, only for not screwing it up. Which I understand. There was no thinking with this pick.
Well, they could have traded it.
Yeah, but come on.
I mean, there was some talk right after the.
Nico Harrison, if he would have traded this pick, they might have pulled the JFK in Dallas.
By the way, I'm not the only one, but I'm gonna call him out for his statement. Fortune favors the bold. No.
Adam Silver rigged the league for you, buddy.
If Nico Harrison planned the trade of Anthony Davis, knowing Anthony Davis would get hurt and that they would fall into the number 1 pick, then he is the smartest GM I've ever heard. This is the most asinine statement I've ever heard. You had a 1.8% chance of getting that pick. Fortune does not favor you, other than you got extremely lucky. And by the way, in Dallas, there are a lot of rabbits missing their paws right now.
All right, next up we have Detroit Pistons, who also only made 1 pick. They got Chaz Lanier at 37. I thought this was a smart pick from them, considering they might lose Malik Beasley or Tim Hardaway Jr. in free agency, and he kind of replicates their skill set to a T. And I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, he does have one elite skill. He's a great shooter.
Yeah.
We saw he's not anything but that.
No, but he's very
good at that.
shooting.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Golden State Warriors. Again, 2 late second rounders, Alex Tui at 52 and Florida Gator Will Richard at 56. Sure, not much to say here.
I'm going to push back. This didn't make a lot of sense because they traded back at a position and a time when there was a perfect Golden State big, Maxime Reynaud. He gives you rim protection, and he's a shooter from outside. He would have been ideal. They had no reason to trade back.
Especially with the Golden State Warriors surprisingly lacking shooting in these past year.
Yeah.
Will Richard brings some of that to the table, but I don't think at the end of the day he's going to be a big-time contributor in the league. Yeah. And then Tui...
We don't know. At least I'd heard of him, though.
Yeah, I'd seen him before. Indiana Pacers... They got Cam Jones at 38 and Talon Peter at 54. Very confusing draft. When we saw the name Talon Peter pop up on the screen, we both said, who?
Right.
I had never heard of this guy, and I would describe myself as college basketball sicko. That's because he played 4 years at the Division II level. He played 1 year at the D1 at Liberty. Yes, they made the tournament this past year. What's very intriguing about him is he's the most efficient player in the country. He led NCAA in true shooting percentage. He shot 76% on twos and 45% on threes. So this guy could be the next can't miss prospect.
Well, it's one thing not to know Lachlan Olbrich. Yeah. It's another thing not to know Talon Peter, because we actually watch
I don't watch NBL.
Ton. Right. It's hard to get the NBL games. You got to go up on the roof with the old antenna. But it made sense. Cam Jones, given where they're picking.
Right? Cam Jones, love the pick.
Good pick.
Especially because of the unfortunate Tyrese Halliburton injury. And especially we've seen his ability to run point guard this past year at Marquette, averaging 6 assists a game while scoring 20 points. Love the pick. We shouted him out on our big board. Good value at 38. Peter, I would compare him to, I haven't seen him play, but for the Pacers, a Ben Shepherd type of pick where it's kind of out of nowhere.
Yep.
And Ben Shepherd so far seemed like a decent value for the Pacers. He's playing in the finals, but the book is still out on tape. Next team up, we have the LA Clippers, who drafted Yannick Conan Niederhauser at 30 and Kobe Sanders at 50. This, to me, is a yes question mark. Yes.
Puzzle. That's a puzzle.
I like the fit of YKN as the backup for Zubac. I think, like I compared him to Jackson Hayes in our big board. They needed a backup in the front court, and I think he fits that need. And then I had him on my big board, first round grade. Kobe Sanders, we don't know much about. I didn't see him play this past year at Nevada. He spent 4 years at Cal Poly. He's a big point guard. Obviously, he's going to be backing up,
Everybody.
Norman Powell, James Harden, real solid backcourt there. So, and he's taking the 50th overall pick. So, I'm sure there's not a lot of expectations there. But I would say this draft made sense.
To me, I was puzzled because I'm not a huge fan about the kid from Penn State. Basically, there's a rule of thumb in the NBA. If you play basketball at Penn State, don't draft him because I think
he was the only first-round pick
ever.
I forgot to mention in my notes, I said about Kobe Sanders, they drafted Trenton Flowers 2 years in a row.
Yeah. I think they just need to get younger at certain positions, a la either
and they took two older prospects.
Yeah, Kawhi or Harden. I would have leaned in that direction. I think the kid from Penn State is a bit of a luxury.
Both are late bloomers in their college career.
Again, what's that? He was the
last pick in the first round.
Last pick
50.
in the first round. It's hard to really fault them, but I just don't understand it necessarily.
Next, we have the LA Lakers with Adu Thero. I like the pick, and they only gave up 55 overall and some cash. I think Adu Thero right now looks like a carbon copy of Jared Vanderbilt, who never plays for them because he's so injured. And I think this is okay. He'll play. They need depth, cheap depth. He'll play.
This made no sense to me. Not because Thero doesn't have skill and talent. He does. He's a very hard worker, solid defender, good rebounder, gets to the rim. But that's exactly what they don't need. They need a rim protector, a rim runner.
Yeah, they're obviously their centers, their weakest position, as we saw in the playoffs. But I think
at this point, you could have still gotten Renault. You could have gotten another center. It made no sense. And who was picked last year at 55?
Bradley James.
So you gave up wouldn't you want to keep that in perpetuity? It should be the Bronny James pick every year.
Aaron Wiggins, put some respect on the champ.
This one made no sense because they need shooting, and he's not a shooter.
Yeah, shooting and big, and he doesn't really provide that. But I do think, with Jared Vanderbilt always being the questionable health, he can slot into that role. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Next, we have the Memphis Grizzlies, who to me, did not like their draft. They got Cedric Coward at 11, Javon Small at 48, and Jemai Meshack with the last pick in the draft. Coward, I thought, was a bit of a reach at 11. Javon Small, 2.0. And then Meshack, I'm more offensively gifted than him. And I'm not getting drafted anytime soon. I just am very confused with what's the plan? They traded Bane for Cole Anthony, picks.
Very good business.
They got picks, a lot of picks, Cole Anthony, KCP, whatever. But I don't know, are they going to stick with the Ja and JJJ duo? Is that what they're going forward with? We don't know, and I don't think any of these picks kind of show me their plan.
I think it was a very puzzling draft because, forget Small, I don't think he's anything related to Ja Morant other than
they play kind of similar. They look kind of
height. But to trade up.
Yeah, they traded up
to get the biggest mystery in the draft. I mean, Hugo Gonzalez is probably the biggest mystery.
Howard is the biggest mystery in the draft.
Yeah,
you can say that.
So, okay, but to give up one of those first round picks to move up 5 spots when you probably still get Coward at 16, if I'm being real. It's just a head scratcher. Right now, they're on the outside looking in of a stacked Western Conference.
They are very much on the outside. But Josh said, I'm not worried about the West. I'm fine in the West.
Yeah.
And then Meshack, ESPN makes a good point. He would have much better fit the grit and grind days in Memphis. They don't play like that anymore. Next up, we have the Miami Heat. 1 pick in the draft, Kasparas Giannis. Good pick. Made sense. Obviously, as a Gator and Heat fan, I would have loved Walter Clayton with the Jazz. Wanted to steal him. But Giannis, yeah, 20th overall. Great value. Questions, like we said in our big board, the turnovers, the athleticism, the defense. But at the value, good pick.
I have another cliche here. Fortune favors standing pat, as in Pat Riley.
As in Pat Riley needs to go.
He saw this is the best possible outcome for the Heat in not moving around. They have a huge gaping hole at point guard. He's a point guard. Let's see if he can play. Fine. Loved it.
Yeah, good pick, but Pat Riley still needs to go. Next up, we have the Milwaukee Bucks with Bogoljub Markovic at 47th overall. ESPN was super saying, Giannis is keeping an eye on this pick. This is Giannis's pick. To me, this is a not good pick. Bucks does not make sense. Dame went down, right? You're already one of the oldest teams in the league with questions about depth, right? Do you want to waste another year of Giannis's prime? How about adding a guy? Yeah, it's 47 overall, but add an experienced guy who can slot in and play 10 minutes a game. You picked a big question mark who may be a stash pick.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Lakers. The Lakers were at 55, and they jumped up for just cash to 36.
And got a guy who could play.
So it's a little puzzling, especially when you have free agency decisions by Lopez, by Portis, whether you re-sign one or both. And then the Giannis question. This was just a head scratcher.
Milwaukee's been malpractice ever since they won their title in 2021. Just get a guy who can play, man. They did it again. They did it last year. At least they picked some younger guys like Tyler Smith, but guys who aren't going to play.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Minnesota Timberwolves. They had Johan Bernier at 17 and Rocco Zakarsky at 45. I thought this made sense-ish. Obviously, they're one of those. They're banking. They did the Nets. They drafted 2 very similar players, in hopes that one of those guys can fill their front court.
Yeah, it makes sense because your second oldest guy on the roster is Gobert. I think Conley's the oldest.
Yeah, by far.
And they theoretically addressed that last year with Dillingham and Shannon. Sure, I'm not a huge fan of either guy.
I think,
but
the 7'3" Rocco Zakarsky was the much better pick here because he's 7'3". Johan Bernier, did you have him on your big board?
Yes.
I didn't, and at 17, I thought that was like a little bit of a reach.
Yeah, he was consistently pretty highly rated. He is mobile. The comparison between him and Zakarsky, Zakarsky's like a big body 7'3". Johan can at least move. So maybe, but okay.
Yeah. Next up, we have the New Orleans Pelicans, who a lot of people have been trashing on their draft. And in terms of the haul, I like it. They got Jeremiah Fears at 7, Derek Quinn at 13, Micah Peavy at 40. It's more so what they gave up to move to 13.
Yeah.
As we mentioned before, they gave up an unprotected first rounder. And obviously the 23rd pick as well. But I like the talent they got for it. Yes, the move, disagree with, but in terms of the talent, I like the team. If New Orleans is healthy next year, they're making the playoffs easily. They have a lot of talent on that roster.
Yeah, except that's a huge if.
The biggest if in the league.
And who is the point guard? Is it Murray?
Murray's recovering from the
Fears?
Achilles.
I mean,
Poole can spot in there.
Yeah, I did not like
Jose
this
Alvarado.
because of what they gave up. In a vacuum, Fears and Queen, solid players. We had them either close to the lottery or in the lottery. Yes, makes sense. The problem is, there's a problem and not a problem. Queen is way more offensive than minded than Misi, but you can't play them both at the same
Doesn't
time.
even shoot.
So
That's fine.
and Queen is a lane clogger because you have Fears who likes to get in the lane, and you have Zion who needs to get in the lane. So to me, to move up 10 spots for a guy who has talent, no question, but maybe not on this team, and give up what could be AJ DeBonsa next year.
Well, Troy Weaver is shameless in his DMV.
It's just like, okay, you have convictions. I'm glad you have convictions. Again, if it was just getting those players, I'd be like, this is a good draft. But given you gave up a potentially hugely valuable pick,
Which time will tell.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Knicks, who drafted Mohamed Diawara at 51. Made sense considering they don't really have the space for a roster spot. It's a stash guy.
and they don't have a coach.
They don't have a coach, but I mean, I'm not mad at this. You know, they don't want to waste any roster spots. So draft a guy as a stash overseas.
See, I would have liked to see them get a guy who could play. Kolek, maybe they.
Kevin McCullough.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But you know, they have such a limited rotation.
Well, maybe they don't. Thibs, in his mind, they had a limited rotation. But any other coach probably would have played more of these guys and we could see what they're about.
Maybe.
Next up, we have the OKC Thunder, the reigning champs. I like this draft from them. It was very Sam Presti-esque. I personally think Thomas Sorber is... ESPN said it themselves. I'll read it. Squint and you can see the outline of Isaiah Hartenstein, likely to be an odd man out of OKC's core grows more expensive. And I think Thomas Sorber is not a picture-perfect replacement for Ihart, but he is a good replacement for Ihart in his defense and his connected passing skills. Obviously, Ihart's a better rebounder, as you've made clear, and he's a little bit bigger. But I really like Sorber. I had him as a pretty high prospect on my big board, so I don't think it's a reach at all at 15.
No, it makes sense. Yeah. The question is, where does he go? Because they have 15 guys on their roster. He's not getting signed to a two-way, so you have to move off somebody.
Just cut those two guys at the end of the bench. Only one guy, because Brooks Barnheiser was their other pick. Another real Sam Presti pick here, because he wasn't on anybody's radar, but dude's a gamer at Northwestern, plays hard, good player, but he'll be on a two-way contract.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Orlando Magic. I did not like their draft. Obviously, I think that they will be good next year after the acquisition of Bane, but they drafted Jace Richardson at 25 and Noah Penda at 32. You're trading up to take Rasheer Fleming? Sure, I get it.
Yeah.
Trading up to take Noah Penda? Huh?
Yeah, and he's made clear he's not a stash player. He is going to be on the NBA roster, and I don't know. Maybe they see some future KCP in him. I don't think so.
How tall is he? Do you know?
He's like a big guard.
So they took another wing?
Yeah, and Jace Richardson on this team. Okay, it's a look to the future. But they have a lot of looks to the future.
I did see someone point out, the main concern with Jace was his height. However, Magic having two jumbo ball handlers in Paolo and Franz does alleviate that concern a little bit.
Yeah, but again, I would just rather have a guy who's I'd rather have, in this situation, a Cam Jones or a pure shooter. Give me Kobe Bryant here. Just it was a little bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, add to the shooting. You got Bane, add more to the shooting.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Philadelphia 76ers, who drafted VJ Edgecombe at 3 and Janai Broome at 35. I'm a fan of this draft. Obviously, the VJ pick was expected. With Janai Broome, I like this a lot with Embiid's health being in the air, because if Embiid isn't healthy, Broome will play.
Right. I had zero questions about this draft. I had to kind of be talked into Edgecombe, and I was overlooking how active he is defensively.
And I think we talked a lot about his college tape last year, or on our last episode. His FIBA tape is really impressive, what he did with the Bahamian national team, who was this close to qualifying for the Olympics. And I think that's obviously a more pro-like game atmosphere.
Yeah, no, it made sense. He was the pick that made the most sense among. If you weren't going to take Bailey, then I think this made.
Yeah, which apparently Bailey threatened the Sixers.
Well, he threatened a top 5 team.
Yeah,
I don't think he called up Dallas and said, "Don't pick me." Just
yo, Dallas, bro, don't pick me with the 1 spot. And it probably was Omar Cooper calling up, who apparently I found out today is a convicted felon for cocaine and armed Uzi.
Are we certain about this?
Yes.
Okay.
Served 6 months in federal prison. And then gave birth to one of Atlanta's greatest point guards. He didn't give birth.
I don't think he actually did that.
Phoenix Suns, moving on. Their whole, in my eyes, I like it. Kaman Malawach at 10, who I had as my 3rd best prospect, and a lot of people said he fell. Rasheer Fleming, first pick of the 2nd round, and Kobe Bryant at 41. The question is, did they give up too much?
The Phoenix Suns have basically said, here, take all of our picks, our 1st round, our 2nd round. Here's some Phoenix Mercury picks we'll throw into the mix. Basically, keep your name out of your mouth every time.
Yeah, Adam Silver, you're not allowed to say our name for the next 5 years.
Right. And maybe it's because they want to enjoy their, an extended Cancun trip. I don't know. Yeah, if you're just looking at the players, fine. They lucked into Malawach, but then...
Why trade for Mark Williams moments later?
Yeah, I don't know which came first. I've heard it that Williams came after Malawach.
But that would make less sense. If they traded for Williams and they're like, wow, Malawach is still available, got to take the best player on the board.
Yes.
Sure. And, I mean, obviously the big concern with their team last year was their lack of a center. So I think they're just like, hey, we are never having that problem again.
Well, that wasn't the only concern.
But that was one of the biggest ones.
I mean, health, age.
Their starting center was Nick Richards.
Beal, Tyus Jones was poor. Yeah, Malawach, we love him as a prospect. But I'm not sure he and Williams can play on the court at the same time.
No, I'm expecting in 24-24.
They may be Malawach. But neither guy has an outside shot.
No, 24. This is a 24-24 split.
It's a
this is just another example, though, of Matt Ishbia being the most running wild owner in the league, on his way to potentially being the worst owner in the league, because nobody is there to keep that dude in check. He's doing everything behind the scenes like it's 2K My League. However, Rasheer Fleming, really like to pick
smart
at the value,
smart
because he's going to play.
Yeah.
And Kobe Bryant is the best shooter in the draft.
Yeah, okay, but it's not like they don't have other shooting guards there.
Well, Grayson Allen may not be there, and Grayson Allen was not great for them, and Bradley Beal was not great for them. I'm not saying Kobe Bryant is a starter in the NBA, but there is one thing that he is so elite at.
He's a great shooter.
Like, he shot 50% at Dayton from 3, 43% in the SEC this year.
Great shooter, but it's like somebody running a Ponzi scheme. You're just, I'm getting as much money up front as I can, without any regard for the consequences.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Next up, we have the Trailblazers, who drafted Hansen or Yang Hansen. His name, the order is a mystery. I thought he was Hansen Yang at 16, which was a mega reach. Obviously, there's a lot of people saying, if you got your guy, take your guy.
No.
But, dude.
No.
Donovan Clingan, you drafted him last year. DeAndre Ayton, still on your roster. Robert Williams, still on your roster. Well, all three of those things, they don't shoot, and they're all centers, right?
Right.
So you drafted a 7'2" guy.
Who can't shoot.
Who can't really shoot. Offensively, though, I heard he is a premier passer. He's a playmaking hub. I think he won the CBA Offensive Player of the Year award this year. So if he was an early 2nd round pick, he balled out the combine. Sure. But at 2 picks outside the lottery, when you have 3 other centers on your team who are, I guess, starter worthy.
Here's the problem. Last year, at the start of the year, we said, well, Portland has too many guards and too many centers, right? They have those 3 centers we talked about, and they had Simons instead of
Sharp and Scoot.
Now, this year, they have
Holiday, Sharp, and Scoot.
and
an extra
4
center.
You can't play Hansen alongside any one of those other centers.
Especially not Klingon, who you just took with the 4th overall pick. Or 6th overall.
Yeah, he was
High lotto.
very curious. The only way I'm not completely... At least they had a preference. They followed their preference, and they got a first-round pick out of it.
They did, because they moved back a little bit.
Yeah, so...
Credit to them.
Okay, but this is a team that I don't know if they think they're going to compete, but they have gluts, and you can't have gluts.
Next, we have Sacramento King, who took Nick Clifford at 24 and Maxime Reynaud at 42. I was a fan of this draft. I think they got 2 first-round talents.
Yep.
And guys who can play right away, experienced college players.
Yeah, good business.
Yep. Next, we have the Spurs. Dylan Harper with number 2. Carter Bryant with number 14. Definitely more confident with the Dylan Harper pick than the Carter Bryant, but I think at 14, it's decent value, especially when we know his defense will most likely translate if anything else comes along. You know?
It made sense, and they didn't do the dumb thing, which is to trade Harper.
Yeah.
So it made sense, and they're well positioned.
Next, we have the Toronto Raptors, who drafted Colin Murray Boyles at 9, Elijah Martin at 39, and proceeded to fire Masai Ujiri 32 hours later. This was another one of my least favorite drafts, and I'll tell you why. Colin Murray Boyles, right? Let's take the fatter, shorter, worse Scotty Barnes. Elijah Martin, go Gators. Let's take Davion Mitchell, who we just traded. I think...
The oldest player on that roster is Jakob Poeltl. And we both question why is he still on that roster. But okay, he's still on that roster. Jakob Poeltl is not a shooter.
Non-shooting center.
CMB is a non-shooter. How can you play them on the court at the same time? And Scotty Barnes is an okay shooter.
He's developing.
But
he's gotten better every year.
He's no sniper.
No, not yet.
So it's like, what in the heck are they doing? And then you allow Masai Ujiri to run your draft only to fire him. Either my theory is he wanted to take Malawach, who was available, and he was overruled.
Would have loved that pick for them.
That it would have made a lot of sense. You have a replacement for Poeltl. You don't have to start him right away.
And when I heard Colin, and I was like, at first I was like, oh, they're making the right. Oh, Colin Murray was.
It's the biggest head scratcher. Why you fire this guy who is coveted around the league?
By the way, yes, but I do think he has not been at the top of his game the last few years. Obviously, since 2019, I think he's been on the decline. But yeah, he's a good president.
I'd love to know though if he was forced to pick CMB or he wanted to pick CMB and then they all got buyer's remorse. I don't know. It's an epically bad look and draft.
Yeah, and then ESPN also mentions they have Jonathan Mogbo, who, again, a non-shooting, undersized tweener on their roster. So, I don't know. I mean, obviously, Ujiri has had a known fascination with wings, but I don't think he was in charge here. And if he was, they fired quick.
Yeah.
Next, we have Utah Jazz, who drafted Ace Bailey at 5, Walter Clayton at 18, and John Tonji at 53. All 3 were first-round grades by me. I really like what they did here.
I'm going to say yes, but okay. Yeah, looking at the guys they got in a vacuum, you'd be like, yes. If somebody said you're going to get Bailey and Clayton in the first round, that's good business. The hesitation I have here is there's talk that Ace Bailey does not want to be in Utah. And he's either, if he's going to engineer something to get out of there, Utah has no leverage. If he plays there and he's unhappy, they have very little leverage. So that's the question mark. Bailey as a talent is excellent.
The player empowerment movement, if that's the case, has gone too far. Okay. There is no way this dude is going to leave $40 million on the table.
No, I don't think he's going to sit out, but there's other ways. He's got the Jimmy Butler playbook.
He doesn't have Jimmy Butler pedigree to do that.
Understood.
If he sucks this season, on purpose or not, everyone's going to call him a bust, and nobody wants to trade for him.
Yeah, but a guy who is ranked as high as 3 always will have some down the line.
Sure, but not 40 mil.
No,
Bro,
but
if he doesn't report to camp on Monday, if he does what Shamar Stewart's doing from the Bengals, completely different situation, by the way, because the Bengals are the cheapest franchise in the NFL, and Shamar Stewart's 17th pick, whatever. But if he does that and sits out, it will be the dumbest camp move I've ever seen, and
since not visiting,
since what he did 2 weeks ago.
The other thing I want to say about this is we love Walter Clayton. He's I call him the ultimate closer. The problem is he's a little older. On this team, it's probably not there. He would be a better fit on other more competitive teams.
Yeah, but I do think he brings obviously championship experience to a team that's full of losers.
Yeah, and I don't know what the fascination Utah has with Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah, I really hope this offseason they move off Clarkson and Bo Sexton and just give the reins to the young guns.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think they recognize Cody Williams, even though it's a year in, was a miss. But let Isaiah Collier run the show. Let Bryce Sensabaugh take a little bit more shots. Taylor Hendricks, we don't know because of just the unfortunate injuries. Obviously, Lauri Markkanen is another big timeline, way different.
But he's way different. I mean,
no, he's a good player.
You're gonna get stuff.
You could get some young guys back, but I'm just saying they gotta figure out what they're doing there. Next and finally, we have the Washington Wizards, who drafted Trey Johnson at 6, Will Riley at 21, and Jameer Watkins at 43. This was for me a good draft. Good draft for them. I like what they're doing, bringing in more teenagers. They're going all in on the youth movement, except they do have, surprisingly, a weird veteran core of Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, and Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon. But they do have like 6 teenagers on the roster, and those are, I guess, a good group of vets to learn from. Some championship experience there with Middleton and Smart and Brogdon.
In the way too early look at next year, they have the Wizards with the number 1 pick.
Oh, no, they're going to suck.
The guys they picked, I thought made sense here. Trey Johnson is one of the best shooters in the draft. Yes, he has limitations, but I don't need to hear about his limitations. Every guy, after a few, has limitations.
Yeah.
Will Riley is a perfect, let's throw this dart against the wall and see if it sticks. He's
ton of offense potential.
He's young.
Young. He reclassed up.
Yeah, he's got a skill. He's a shooter-ish.
Streaky.
Perfect guy. And then Watkins, okay.
Defensively, he might be able to contribute. He's kind of a do-it-all wing, at least for FSU, because he had to because their team was so trash. But
I just don't know what they're doing with this.
It's really strange, the 2 different timelines they got. But in my head, how I'm making sense of it is those guys are going to serve as the vets for these young guys because they have so many young guys, and they are good vets on paper.
McCollum, I think, still has value to a team.
Oh, 100%. The rest of those guys are washed.
Are on the downside.
McCollum is averaging like 23 points a game in New Orleans. Like, he can...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If a team needs a shooter, frankly, as a part-time replacement for Kyrie, he'd be excellent. So I just don't understand what their plan is, if they have one.
Yeah, but so that was our making sense of the NBA draft, team by team. It's we've said it's not the best draft necessarily in terms of depth, but there's a lot of top-heavy guys, and we're very excited to see some of these guys, how they translate into the NBA. Next year's looking crazy so far. We have a 3-way tie consensus for the number 1 pick, which is nuts.
Yeah.
And you got anything to say for the people?
No, it was an interesting draft process, very emotional for all of us.
As Jay Billis was strangely pointed out, this is the most emotional draft in years. And we want these guys to...
I did like Bob Myers resisting the urge to kill Stephen A. He said by the 17th pick, he's like, the biggest surprise in the draft is I haven't killed you yet. So it was fun.
And one other thing, stop in 2 days, bro.
Yeah. I don't.
I guarantee that thing. I love second round for me. I like it more than the first round just because it's for the real college basketball fans out there. But that probably had under 1 million viewers.
Yeah, I mean,
who is tuning in to watch that?
Summer, there's not much going on.
I guess, but just make it 1 day, bro, and just give the second round teams a little bit less time.
We got some exciting stuff coming up. We have a look back at where we had teams in the NBA versus
before the season, we did it for college basketball. We're gonna do it for the NBA.
We also have a recap of free agency and the trades because we haven't really touched on
free agency is looming.
It's not gonna be much, but
this upcoming Monday. But I think trades. We could see some big trades.
And then Summer League.
Summer League is very exciting. We love Summer League, and that's all we got for y'all. If you're still watching, please make sure to like and subscribe and drop a comment about what we got wrong. You know, who you disagree with, which team had a better haul than we gave them credit for. And without further ado, we'll see you on the next episode. Peace.